there's going to be like this Bitcoiner wealth gap of like the Bitcoiners and the fulfillment they have in life and what they're doing with this world that they're living in versus the government world that you accepted. Well, you don't have to choose that. You can choose something different. That's why we do what we do. I mean, that's why I do what I do. It's like, I could just go live on a farm somewhere. I could just go do nothing and shut my mouth. Like I said, that's not what drives me. It's the fear at the end of my life that I get to the gates and he's staring me in the face and saying, hey, why don't you do this?
If I'm going to give my energy to changing the world, is it better to be a pioneer, an idealist, the no compromises tip of the spear, or to be the bridge builder who helps people create the widest possible path to get closer to the right answer or closer to good or just incrementally better?
This is a thing I've been thinking about for a while now, for a couple of years, and it's kind of what we've been dancing around a little bit. And this is idealism versus pragmatism.
Welcome back to Hosting Bitcoin, where we explore the people, ideas, and paradigm shifts that shape the future of freedom, sovereignty, and human flourishing. Our guest today is someone who approaches Bitcoin less like a trade and more like a lens for understanding the world. Brandon Gentile is a Bitcoin content creator, podcast host, and outspoken advocate for sound money, self-sovereignty, and critical thinking. Through his show, Playable Characters, as well as his writing, Brandon dives deep into the deeper implications of Bitcoin, not just economically, but culturally, psychologically, and even spiritually. As a former professional hockey player turned entrepreneur, father, and freedom-minded educator, Brandon has built a reputation for asking the uncomfortable questions and exploring the edges of where Bitcoin intersects with power, identity, media, and meaning. And today, we're talking about the human side of Bitcoin, not just what it does in markets, but what it does to people and what it ultimately means for humanity. Brandon, it is so great to have you on Hosting Bitcoin. Thanks for joining me.
Beau, it's an honor to be here. Any time that someone asks me to come to a pod, a stage, whatever, to talk about Bitcoin and separating money and state, it's a great honor. So thank you.
So for the benefit of me and everybody listening, I haven't met you before. I would love to get just the short intro of like who you are, where you came from, some of your background story to get a little bit of context for everything that we're going to talk about in the next hour or so.
Boy, so I grew up in Michigan. Obviously, hockey is a pretty big sport in Michigan, and the Detroit Red Wings were great at that time. So it was just kind of a natural evolution, playing on ponds growing up. But you know, in saying all that, and then I ended up playing professional hockey. I played at Michigan State University, won a national championship there, won a world championship, played in the U.S. under 17 and under 18 team. Was a good, very good player growing up. I was also like a man child. So that's why by the time I was like 12, 13, so that really helped. And so one of the big things though about hockey, so like, you know, my story growing up, I grew up in a conservative, you know, libertarian household, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I have this theory again of why hockey and why some of this is so good. I feel very blessed growing up the way I did because I got in a lot of fights growing up. I, you know, would wrestle my buddies, but then hockey, you get in a lot of fights. Like it's just natural. And seeing society as the way it is now, and a lot of the, I don't know how the best way to describe it, but a lot of people just don't get punched in the face anymore because we have keyboards in front of us, you know, like it, love it, hate it, doesn't matter. There's no feedback loops. There's no accountability in life. And when you're face to face with somebody and you get hit in the face or you're giving it out, you're dishing and taking, you really start to learn feedback loops. You learn accountability, you learn merit, you learn responsibility of, hey, if I do this thing, this thing might happen back. So I feel very blessed that I got to see that as a kid growing up my entire life. And I have a healthy respect. I'm a big guy. Like I can hold my own and take care of myself. But I don't go around. It's the whole gardener in the war versus the warrior in the garden. Like, which one do you want to be? And we've lost a lot of that in life. And just, you go to the cliche, you know, fourth turning stuff. You talk about, you know, good times, they create soft men, and soft men create, you know, hard times, and we're definitely in that loop. And we're probably at somewhere around the end of that fourth turning. And that's why so many things are so confusing. You see what's going on all over the world of, you know, the walls closing in, they're trying to, you know, digital IDs, or they're trying to do all these tyrannical things because it's just the old system trying to grasp at straws and do all this stuff. So all that being said, we can get into more of that, but that was my hockey life growing up. And when I was at Michigan State University in 2008, 2009, I was graduating as the great financial crisis happened. And as I got older, I always joked that I was a grade school all-star, when it's like math or mental math, like very quick. I would beat all the all the kids that were still geniuses, like 15 years later. I would beat those kids when we were in elementary school. So I would, the geography, you get up the front of the classroom and whoever's left won the thing, right? The spelling bee, all these things. I was phenomenal at it, like these really fundamental things. Then as we got older in like middle school and high school, then I just started to lose interest, and I was like, this is nonsensical. Like, why are we learning things? We're never going to use these things in life. Probably emanated from my father, my upbringing, things of that nature. We were hunters growing up, fishermen. He was ironically a doctor as well, an optometrist, an eye doctor. And so I feel, again, very blessed the way I grew up. But he gave me this window into many different worlds. And then I just started questioning, being the oldest of three. I just started questioning things, kind of the oldest by nature too, of just like blazing a path, questioning teachers. When are we going to learn about money? All this, and no one had any answers. And so, all this being said, I get to the end of my college career, and the great financial crisis is happening. And what really woke me up is again, like I said, I was conservative by nature, thought there was real republicanism of like, hey, we're going to, watch what we spend and do these things. We're going to rein things in, all this stuff. And then the GFC and the TARP bailouts and all that, what happened really blew my mind. Because as a 22-year-old kid, 21-year-old kid, it was very political for the previous 10 years, believe it or not. If I argue with people about politics, whoever, you start to realize how I can't argue with anyone, or I'm done arguing with people, because no one has even read the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. Like anyone that I even argue, whether it's teachers or family members, it didn't matter. And you're like, why am I arguing with you when you've never even read these things before? But then what I realized in '08 was that even the Republican Party, either party, they didn't believe in any of those things. It wasn't red versus blue, it was a state versus you. And one team that I didn't think was going to do that started the bailouts. And then the other team came in and finished the job. And that was like, whoa, like what's actually happening here? And that really blew my mind, mixed with the schooling, and no one could teach you about money. No, you're just going to learn on the job how to work your job and do all these things. And so all these things together added up to me going out on my own as I'm starting now play professional hockey, which a lot of professional sports, you have a lot of time on your hands. You go to the arena for a couple hours and you do your workout, you go, play hockey or whatever it is. And then you have the rest of the day to yourself. So I spent my time studying. I was picking up Creature from Jekyll Island by Jared Griffin that I found from people like Mike Maloney, who wrote The Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, the biggest gold and silver book of all time. And not Rich Dad Poor Dad, actually, but Robert Kiyosaki's book, Why We Want You to Be Rich, with, ironically, Donald Trump. And I found it in the grocery store one day because I knew who Donald Trump was, but I didn't know who Robert Kiyosaki was. But that opened me up to all of Robert Kiyosaki's books and read all of those. And very quickly, in 2009, 2010, got very angry as a young kid of like, this is the stuff I've been looking for. And not only that, but it solves a lot of the political fighting that was going on if you just fix the money and do all these things. And so learning monetary history, I was history buff by nature. So I loved all that stuff and going into it. And after playing hockey for a few years professionally, started getting hurt, get some more fights, hits and stuff like that. Head started getting banged around, other injuries as well. It was in my prime, 24, 25 years old, that I was like, you know what? I got to the level right under the NHL. I was like, I can't keep doing this, because I know if I do this any longer, for another 5 years, 10 years, I'll be a vegetable. I won't be able to operate my body in 5 or 10 years, or when I'm 40 years old, which I'm happy to say I'm 39, just turned 39, and have most of my faculties still. So I made the right decision, and I hung them up in my prime right before, getting to the NHL, right before the goal that I had my whole life. And it was very difficult. Did a lot of thinking and praying of what am I going to do with my life? So as I'm doing all this and I'm reading and understanding what's going on, I leave hockey and I go start a real estate team. So it was like, I loved real estate. I was actually in college for real estate, changed my major a few times for real estate, political science, and eventually ended up in like pre-law economics. And so I started a real estate team and I do that for 10 years. But during that whole process, I'm learning more about money and all this stuff. And I start teaching it. When Instagram Live comes out and Facebook Live, all these different things come out, I'm just going live. I would just hit live and I would go like, hey, I'm going to market for my business and do some marketing for it and stuff. But what it ended up doing is I actually confused my audience more, because I would talk about gold and silver. I talk about what real rates were and all these different, and people were like, well, what do you do? And this was a little bit further down the line. I had my business now for 3 or 4 years at this point, because I think some of these platforms came out with like 2015, 16, 17, where you could go live on Instagram or whatever. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I've been selling real estate. Like I sell real estate, and I help people, and I would invest in stuff as well and get rental properties. And so it just ended up confusing my market more than I even realized. And so I thought it all went together. And during that time, 2016-ish, I think I'd heard about Bitcoin 13 or 14 for once, and it wasn't presented the right way. And then maybe again another year later, and someone on my live stream, I'll never forget, someone on my live stream asked me about Bitcoin when I was talking about gold and silver. And I was like, oh, I like physical things and stuff like that. And then it was probably until 2016 when I really was like, okay, I got to figure this out more. 2017. And I was like, oh yeah, this seems very interesting. But it was right at the time when I really started kind of getting it. It was when Bitcoin was racing upward in 2017, that bull run. And as an investor, and as someone that kind of just came from that world, more conservative, I was, naively at the time, I'm going to wait till Bitcoin comes down until I start buying again. As a Bitcoiner, we all know, like theoretically, it could go up forever. It could go for a year. It could just go exponential and 10x, 100x and then maybe it comes down at some point a little bit. But I eventually started buying in 2018 when it did come back down. And then over that next year or two, I'm learning more and more. I start realizing I don't want to be in real estate anymore. Like this thing here, Bitcoin, the network, and everything about it fixes all of these problems that I had been thinking about for 20 years prior, which is the political things, why business didn't make sense. Like, I'm looking for deals in real estate and it's hard to find deals. And we're like, why aren't these deals? The math ain't mathing. The cap rates were way out of whack in real estate. PE ratios were way out of whack. Even at that time, 2017, 18, 19 in the stock market. So you're looking around and you're like, what? This shouldn't be that complicated. And then when you really start grokking Bitcoin, you start understanding, and then not to mention the other stuff of like holding your wealth in your head. Oh, that's a novel thing. That was never, that was impossible before Bitcoin. So all these little things, seeing a network effect and the youth or the growth of the network, all these things coming together at the same time for me. And then obviously the pandemic hits, and that's when it was like, okay, I can't even do my real estate business anymore. So it took me a year or two I fired myself from my real estate team basically. And again, doing a lot of praying, just like, hey, you guys don't have to leave real estate, but you can't stay here anymore. So the handful of people I had working for me, amazing people, but I knew my calling was not to be in real estate. And it was very obvious at that point. Not only that, it was this world that everything could be rug pulled from you. So I wanted to be in something where the society could heal and you could still have your wealth grow. And so, whether the government rug pulled you or not. So there was so many reasons why Bitcoin made so much sense. And I was like, I need to be in the Bitcoin space and I need to be doing things inside. I don't know what that even entails. Is it writing books? Is it podcasts? Is it working for a company? I had no idea, but it's just, I know I need to be somewhere else. And I'm making the jump. I'm making the leap. And I sunsetted that. I still had a number of rental properties, but it wasn't paying all the bills necessarily. It was just, I'm making this leap. My wife was working at the time. So that could help us too. But it was like, I'm making this leap and here we go. And so that was, I don't know, 4 years ago that I really finally, I think 2022 was when I really finally was able to kind of jump into Bitcoin full time. And the funny part is in 21, 22, that's where I found Bitcoin Twitter, because I was not on Twitter. I left Twitter in like 2010 or 2010 to 2012. That was the last time I really stopped being political because of just these inflection points of the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street, and just realizing they're the same two sides of the same coin, but yet everyone had those people fighting each other. And then you had that election process and everything that transpired. And I was like, I'm done. Like I need to focus on myself. So that's what started me down the journey of just personal development on myself and then starting my businesses. And so that world started me down that road as well, obviously. But then in 2022 was the time I was able to finally, really, I was getting back on Twitter and doing this stuff because I had left Bitcoin Twitter. I was only on these other platforms where I could go live and market my fiat business. And then 2021, 2022 is when I found Bitcoin Twitter, and I didn't know Bitcoiners existed. Like I had no idea. So you think about how many people are out there in the world that might own Bitcoin, or maybe they're like us, but they don't use Twitter. Or they never have found, or whatever it is. Because I was one of those people, for the first 5 years that I owned Bitcoin or whatever, and I was a Bitcoiner, I had no idea that there were Bitcoiners per se. And so that to me is always very interesting, how many of those people are out there. So anyway, all that to be said, it was the last 3 or 4 years. I remember like Larry Lepard is one of the really good friends of them now. 4 years later, he was like one of the first people who followed me. He was like, oh yeah, like wow, I can't remember what was going on at the time or what had happened, but so I'm like quickly starting to meet people in the industry, go to conferences and stuff like that. And it was just like, wow, these are my people. Like these people that exist, that they can kind of thread the needle in all these different areas, whether it's the politics, the understanding, the money being broken, and the root foundational layer of society and the incentives of society, all these different facets. And then the things I love too of being healthy, and all. It's just you go into so many facets of the food being broken. I remember my brother-in-law like 10 years ago, he's a strength trainer, personal trainer he was in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization. And that's how him and my sister met, actually. And so we would talk about this. He'd be like, oh, the food pyramid's upside down. So like I had different people in my life, whether it was my dad or my brother-in-law, or there's all these different people, my father-in-law, who would just give me all these little pieces over time. Like I was like this already, questioning things and then my personality. But then I had these people that would send me down these rabbit holes and be like, oh my gosh, the food pyramid is upside down. And then lo and behold, 10, 12 years later, look, we're changing the food pyramid, so like, I was always on that path. And I think a lot of people are, and maybe not a lot of people, or not everyone's found Bitcoin yet. So I think that's very interesting. But again, it's been a long expose, I guess, of my life, but that's where it kind of leads us to today of making content, writing, some books in the background here, my blog that I started 4 years ago, doing content 4 years ago. And then that turned into doing a podcast 2 years ago. So 2 years in, where I started interviewing people that I knew and just trying to provide education to this direction of life, this network that has given back to me a lot, and the people in all these people that are in the network, not only the network itself and the value that can be created from it and the products and services that can come from it, but also the people that you meet, which is the most important part of it all. The relationships that I have, that you pretty much everything you meet in the Bitcoin space is you feel like you've known them forever. And that to me is as I think about community log, again, coming full circle to land the plane here, being a hunter, being a fisherman, being an outdoorsman, growing up like that, community is the number one thing in a survival situation. And that's what a lot of people don't totally realize. You think it's like gold or it's Bitcoin or water or food or something like that, but it's not. It's the people around you when times are hard, because you don't know what you're going to be lacking. So who is in your circle? Who's right around you physically? Who's in your greater Bitcoin network that you can tap into and say, hey, I need this, or I need to come here or there. That's what really will move the needle when times are tough. Because again, I know we can get into this, but I think times will probably be tough for many people going forward if you're not prepared. So that was a lot, Beau, and that's kind of the full download.
Dude, so many places that we could go from there, but we're not gonna have enough time to pick every thread of that. Relational capital, I totally agree with you. One of the greater things that comes out of this is finding alignment with people and building value through relationships. And even as you're describing this, what sticks out to me is there's so much overlap between all of us in history, in psychology, and you won't find a group of people that are so similar among the shareholders of Apple. But for whatever reason, all of these psychological characteristics seem to line up in the Bitcoin community across many domains. Not that we're all embodying all of them and all of the boxes are checked for everybody, but the Venn diagram has a lot of overlap. It's pretty significant. One thing I'm curious from your journey is, it sounds like it was a mix of both, but I'm curious if it was more the revolution side or the investment side that really pulled you into this space out of what you were previously doing in real estate, and then hockey as well.
Yeah, so it was actually the investment side, which is really interesting. And it's funny you asked that, because I really don't talk about this, actually. I really only solely talk about like kind of like the revolutionary side. And again, this goes back to like, you just don't know. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't realize they're Bitcoiners, and they are Bitcoiners. And I really am, I guess, now that I think about it more and you ask that, more of this story, an example of this, because I got into it because of the investment side. And I believe there's probably a lot of people that get into it, or especially the last 15 years, that you get into it because of the investment side, or maybe at least the last 5 to 10. You get in because of that investment number go up part of it, because I was an investor. I was, stacking gold and silver, and I was, buying real estate, and I was helping sell, buy and sell real estate. So I saw it from an investor's lens, position sizing, because one thing I didn't note too, which I forgot to, is right. Like, I'm trying to think when I started, was it 2017 or 2018, whatever, 2018, when I started buying, Coinbase only had like 20 or 30 tokens on there at the time, or whatever. It wasn't that many. And I bought a bunch of other, altcoins. We'll use that word for now. And so I knew as an investor, fortunately, I bought a lot more Bitcoin, but then I didn't know what I didn't know totally. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't really know about the other coins. I knew a bit about Bitcoin. I was like, oh, I think this is good. But as an investor, I put like little position sizes, like an even amount in all the other ones that were available. And then over that, 2018, as I was studying it more, it became very apparent. I was like, oh, okay. And then I just quickly converted. I don't remember when it was, 2018 or 2019. I converted the rest of it to just a Bitcoin. It wasn't that much, but I was like, okay, I see what's going on here, or whatever. So I got into it because of the number go up aspect first, because it was just like, here's a diversified portfolio. I had metals and real estate, and I was just like that guy, dragon portfolio guy. I'm George Gammon, or like, the guys out there, they're like, we're going to build this portfolio and it's going to save you through everything. And it's like, okay, like that was a world I came from. So then as you start studying in that first year or two, I start realizing, whoa, the structure of society is going to change if we truly change the money. Because gold and silver, it was always this hope, I think, of like, hey, if we can go back to this standard, we'll somehow, fix things. But it was never like, no one ever had an answer in that world, though, truly, of like, how do we keep doing this forever? Because we always come back to, well, we got rug pulled. The government rug pulled us at some point. You have to trust the middlemen. We get centralized because it's physical. And you have this problem that kind of just resets over and over again. So it's just like this hope that like, we just go back on a gold and silver standard or something. But no one ever talks past that. It's just like, we'll just go back to that standard. But there's no talk about what happens there. Bitcoin's what answered all those questions of like, well, how do you actually have a society on that standard? And everything past just signing a bill or going into effect of like, okay, we're on a gold and silver standard. That was it. That's where it ended naturally for thousands of years. But with Bitcoin, the rest of the story opens up. And that's what the average person can't see, obviously. All the political divides, all these things, the consumers and producers being on the separate sides of the table, all those things were fixed with Bitcoin. And as I'm going down and your education goes up and you're thinking of the different objections, well, what about this? What about that? And then you're knocking them down one at a time and doing your homework, doing your research, you start realizing, well, this is really what I think it can be. And if it stays decentralized and secure, it can do said thing. It can actually reorient the structure of society, the architecture of society, and put all those people on the same side of the table and not have people pitted against each other 24/7. And then you start seeing obviously very quickly that unravels, or the downstream effects that has. So for me, it was the number go up aspect for sure. And then quickly over that next first year or two, as you're studying, it became the revolutionary aspect of who I am authentically. As I don't want to be macro guy or number go up guy, or I'm sitting here teaching real rates. The average person it shouldn't matter. And that's one of the reasons I did leave real estate and went and was like, no, I need to be in Bitcoin, because I saw how hard it was. I mentioned this earlier. I was spending 5-10 grand a month just to find a property to invest in. And, the time, the marketing to go out, sending mailers out and having different agents on your team or different employees to go negotiate deals or go look at stuff, inspect properties, and do all this crazy stuff. And I had people lending, to me, and I would raise money. I would buy the property, and we'd fix it up, and we'd refinance it, pull all the money out. There was like infinite return, and it's like that was great. But the time, attention, energy, capital, experience, education, all that you needed to do that was unattainable for the average person. And that's where I again realized, holy cow, that wealth gap is just going to continue growing. Which again, someone that comes from the right. Generally, people think that people from the right don't care about other people's feelings, or they don't. It's like, you don't even care. Like you're just a capitalist. Well, it's like, I know as a sane human being, though, that you can't have Marty McFly's Back to the Future 2, Biff Tannen's Pleasure Paradise here, when you have to have a shotgun in your car when you're just trying to get gas, when you're on the alternate space-time continuum, and the wealth effect has grown so much, and we're eating ourselves. Then it doesn't matter. It's a moot at the end of the day. How rich someone is if society is burning all around you. So that's what I realized at the end of the day, of like, I can keep doing real estate. I could keep doing this. This would be great and all, but it's, again, a lot of time, attention, and energy that I wasn't willing to do. My family is growing. We have 4 kids right now, and but potentially more here, and so we have this world where I don't want that to keep expanding. And it satiated also my desire to fix government and to all the chaos that I grew up in and seeing. And so when you can marry all those worlds together of number go up, and you don't have to be in 3 different businesses and a hedge fund manager. Oh, and by the way, you can also fix a lot of the political problems going on. It was like, how does everyone not see this? And so anyway, the answer is, of course, that everyone doesn't see it right away. Because look, Brandon, it took you years. I mean, 5-10 years of your own trials and tribulations, and then learning Bitcoin for a year or two or whatever it was, and really studying it. So number go up first, and then the revolution part came second, as you're going through the studying and realizing what you're actually looking at.
And you had a lot of the pre-wiring installed already that gave you even a head start in terms of just having the frameworks to be able to understand it, to see it for what it is. Many people don't start from that
Yes.
lens. And you and I have a lot of overlap. I came from a family that was very hot on gold. That was a big part of my early
Hmm.
education was sound money. My wife and I built a real estate company outside of Dallas after school. And, that's what we did for several years. And just like you could have kept doing it, it was working just fine. But there is this sense of not having the spiritual energy for it. And I think that's maybe the more powerful side of this is that, yes, it's awesome investment vehicle, probably the best that
Right.
many of us will
Probably the
ever see in
best.
our
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yep.
But then even beside of that, it's a different kind of energy source. It's a fuel source for purpose and passion that you can unlock if you've already got this bent toward creating freedom for people, creating more cohesion in society, seeing the problems but not really seeing any clear and easy solution. It's kind of ridiculous that something would address so many of the core and fundamental dislocations and frustration that people have in life that, like you said, it's a maybe 10-year journey to even understand what is the problem for most
Yes.
people if they're looking for it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's it. I mean, it's one of those things too, where you see it and it's all that energy, everything you have to do, you realize that no one else is doing this. And that's where I went on a tangent earlier. I didn't finish. The one thought was I had lenders, I had people, doing stuff with me, but no one else was doing it. Because you realize very quickly, like, yeah, like you said, there was 5-10 years of like really learning the process to actually see what you're doing to do it properly. And no one's going to be able to do it. No one has time to do that. And I just go back to real estate is amazing. I love real estate. Just like you said, it's the best thing. I always give, I love the Titanic analogy of the US dollar going down and Bitcoin being a life raft. I use it in many different ways. And real estate's probably to me the last thing that goes into the water. It is to me the best
Mm.
investment in a fiat world. But you have things like the ROI and all these different things, cash flow and dividends, all these things. These are just things to keep us in that old system. They're just these little trinkets, these little carrots to kind of keep us in that system, keep us on the Titanic. And unfortunately, so much of society suffers because of the inverted system, the inverted architecture and incentives of the system that you have to become the Ray Dalios of the world. You got to become Warren Buffett. You have to become Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki just in order to survive going forward. And that's not. And I guess the moral of the story, though, is it's not sustainable for society, and that's the biggest problem, right? It could be fine right now. It's been fine for a few decades in the sense of, hey, if you wanted to go do it, you could do it. Yes, of course. Are there a lot of homeless people on the street? Is there a lot of problems? Yeah, that's the ramifications. The ramifications are we've just been answering to a smaller and smaller group of society because that's who's running things. So they vote for themselves. Good thing. I mean, I think of the Bastiat quote of which I think I've got it right here somewhere, as I said it earlier. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men living together in society, they create for themselves in the course of time a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. And that's where we are. And that's and the guy wrote this hundreds of years ago, right? And so that's where we found ourselves. And to me just going around doing my own thing for myself wasn't good enough. That wasn't a good enough answer. And because at the end of the day, my greatest fear, and I've said this like a year ago, at Camp Nakamoto, actually. So the mass adoption event they had, which is a great event. Someone said, what keeps you going? Like, does it get, producing content and doing stuff like it has to be monotonous or it has to be whatever. And I was like, my fear, the fear I have is the fear of God. Like that's the only thing that drives me going forward. Like I was saying to you offline, I think my only goal is to separate money and state and rid ourselves of the satanic, creatures that are running things all over the world. Like that's my only goal. And so my fear is getting to the gate someday of heaven and God's being like, hey, I gave you this knowledge, man. You didn't say anything about it. Like how'd you help my kingdom, man? Like I literally gave you this and this has been implanted in me since I was a kid. I've known this since I was a kid. This is not like, and so I've never known what I wanted to do with my life. And I was, when I went to play hockey, your academic coordinators and all these people asking you like, what do you want to do? And taking me to the dean's this, and we're going to go do it. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. Like I never knew what I wanted to do because it didn't exist yet in 2005. Bitcoin didn't exist. These answers didn't exist. And
Right.
which is another whole story of like how ridiculous compulsory school is in the formal government run school system we have. But that's a whole nother story for a different day, or we could talk about later. But that to me was, how can we fix this system? Is it cannot go further. You might be able to get away with it for a little bit, but it cannot run ad infinitum. The math doesn't math, and it's going to eat itself, and it's going to collapse in on itself. So how do I put my energy into the system? And naively at the time, I thought politics was bad, but Bitcoin might be even worse, of like trying to get people to understand what's going on. So like I thought like, oh, we're going to roundabout way this of like, we're going to fix politics by like Bitcoin. Like, just look at this thing over here. You can get wealthy doing it, and it's going to fix society. And it's probably harder to educate people on Bitcoin, ironically, which is kind of the path of my life, which is going through the wall instead of over, around it, or under it. And so I just kind of laughed to myself about that type of thing, where politics, still very difficult. Still, obviously, you're slinging mud, but Bitcoin might be potentially harder. People's eyes just glaze over when you bring up Bitcoin, right? So here we are.
Because we're on a similar mission and we're having a conversation in the hopes that somebody listens to it and gets something out of it. What have you found to be the most effective way to close that gap, or to reach people who may not even be looking to be reached by this message?
I think of one thing, is I thought a lot about this, Beau. We're in a place in society, like we said, the fourth turning, there are many cliche things, but when you have DraftKings, sports betting, fantasy sports, casinos all over the place, legal and illegal drugs everywhere. The whole system is designed to sedate you, unfortunately, and get you to basically check out. You read 1984 or Brave New World or something like that, which again, that's a whole story for a different day as well. Those books, to my knowledge, what I've found were actually written by the people that are actually trying to close the walls in by you, or at least were influenced, or they were set out, kind of Operation Mockingbird type of scenarios, to desensitize people to what was coming, actually. So a lot of people think those were like a random guy that was like, oh, this is going to be the future. From what I found, that's not the case. It's actually inverted, which kind of tells you a lot about society and where we are and where we're going, which is, history is faker than the news, so you do have to be careful of what's going on around you. And we've just been sold down the river for so long. It's the old adage of like, how does a fish know he's wet if he's been in the water his whole life? Like it is very tough, because you say, oh, this cartel is here and they're destroying the money and they're blah, blah, blah. And people's eyes just glaze over. So it's meeting people where they are. Number one, obviously is going to be huge, but to me, it's just, putting out content. That's probably why I put out content, because I don't have to directly talk to people necessarily. People can come find it on their own, because I do believe that, as many of us do, like right when you get in, we got to go right to people and like got to talk. And that's always like the wrong thing to do generally. Like if anyone's ever done sales, it's generally, or like, if you're a guy, you chased a girl before or something like that, it's like the hard to get. It's like kind of like you almost want to, you don't want to be like going full throttle and just coming right at somebody. So it's putting out content, putting your thoughts out there, doing those things. But again, I think part of it's just, seeing where those people are. And I'm always like putting out trial balloons with people to see like, what do they believe? Like I'll say random things, conspiratorial things or whatever, just as like, how do they react? Right. And then you can kind of gauge, where their head's at. I'll say something positive or negative about Donald Trump, or, like a lot of times I'll kind of, you can do these little things just to gauge where people are at. And that's largely what I'm doing a lot of times. But I mean, to be honest, I don't go out to orange pill people anymore necessarily. It's just, I try to focus on what I can control around me, be an example for other people, try to live a good life, be healthy, be in shape, live the way I want to live. And because part of it too is you find with like politics and a lot of these things that people are looking across the pond, literally and figuratively. They're looking over the people's head that are right around them, what's important. And so we miss that, instead of just focusing on the people right around us. And that ripple effect, if we're giving the time and attention to our spouse or loved ones or whoever, then that ripple effect, if everyone's doing that, or 1% or 5% of people are doing that, that changes society orders of magnitude. And so it go back to, this is where we have the sedation of society, all this stuff going on. And so bringing this back full circle to what you're asking, I try to talk to people in the terms of, hey, someone made a decision for you to be here right now. Like somewhere along the line, even if it wasn't your mother and father, like people always use straw men, but someone, your grandparents, your great grandparents, like somewhere someone made these decisions that put you here for a reason right now. Like I said, Beau, like I've really struggled with this in the sense of, I thought about it a lot, and how do you get through to a society who seemingly doesn't care about anything, right? They're very black pilled almost. They don't believe anything. God's left a lot of people's lives. So you could substitute God with truth. You could substitute God with humility, being humble. whatever you want to call it, in order to get to different people. And so how do you get to people who are sedated, who just don't care about anything? And some people you're not going to, like the poor will always be among you, the meek, or the, like they'll always be here, some people. But I do believe vast majority of people can be woken up. But a lot of times I think it's pain, touching the stove. We have to go through the pain. We have to go through the fatal funnel on our own, go through the gauntlet. So I don't know if that's a great answer to your question, because I don't think I have the right thing. It's just meeting people where they are, and also trying to touch their heartstrings, I guess, in a way of like, hey, someone made decisions for you, in order for you to be here someday at some point, and maybe hundreds of decisions, thousands of decisions that were made in order for you to be here at this point. And it's hard. It's hard to wake up a sedated society.
I agree with you, and it's so much easier to speak to people who are swimming toward you rather than swimming away from you. And I mean, we do a lot of
Yes.
inbound marketing, I guess you would say, versus like
Mm-hmm.
outbound when you're just trying to interrupt people and try to get them to pay attention to something that they're not already sort of curious about. The best analogy that I really enjoy is be a lighthouse and not a tugboat. You can shine your
Yes.
light to people and guide them in to make their own decisions and use their energy to get closer to what it is that you're talking about. But you going out and trying to pull people along is a huge drain of energy, and you can only help so many people at a time when you're taking that sort of approach. So completely agree with you. Have you experienced, because you and I both got into this in years where it was still very, I'm going to call it heavy revolutionary energy. There was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
idealism, a lot of revolutionary fight spirit that has been a part of this. And in the last couple of years, I've seen definitely a sea change, definitely an energy change, where we could blanket it by saying, like, the suits are here. Sort of the people that
Right.
are much more aligned with the thing that this is meant to be, if not in direct opposition to, a healing force for. It's definitely changed the energy of it. Do you feel like part of that is sucking out the revolutionary energy of what we've gotten into and what got us into it, or deepened our conviction in it, or is it just inevitable and part of the process of being successful?
I think the quick answer is both. Yeah, I think it's inevitable. And Marty and, if someone doesn't know, I guess, Marty Bent and Matt Odell were just saying this the other day, I believe, which is the pie's grown bigger. There's more people that hold Bitcoin, but the percentage of Bitcoiners is probably smaller. Still could be more Bitcoiners that have joined and true ethos and got the freedom revolutionary spirit, but as a percentage, it's down. And so to answer your question in that way, yeah, I mean, I really feel it has been watered down. I remember, like I said, when I found Bitcoin Twitter, even 5 years ago, it was very revolutionary, very outside the lexicon. And I really feel like the last 2 years, because like I said, the first 5 years, I really didn't know Bitcoin Twitter. So I can't comment on that part. I can only imagine if 2020, 2021, 22, if that was pretty revolutionary, then I can only imagine what Bitcoin Twitter was like. That I really wish I would have been, right when I started like learning the space, I wish I would have found Bitcoin Twitter right away. But the last 2 years have been tough because the ETFs have come, and naturally I feel like humans, we've taken a back seat, meaning like we've taken our foot off the pedal. Maybe that's the best way to say it. Like we just saw, like, subconsciously, yes, the big guys are here. I mean, look, you had Donald Trump come to the conference 2 years ago, the big conference, and talk about Bitcoin. I mean, the president of the United States was there, a former president. That's wild. I mean, like 10 years ago, if you would have told any of us that, I mean, we would have been, no way. Like, you could have bet us any amount of Bitcoin and we never would have accepted. Like, there's just no way. And so for that to happen, and then for the next 2 years, price not to really take off, ETFs come in and really has just, everything has kind of lagged. Obviously spirits are down, they're dampened. And I think it's coincided with the revolutionary aspect of it. Like, I feel like there's not as many memes anymore. The culture is kind of gone. Like we feel like a lot of the what really makes Bitcoin special, the social layer, has been diminished because we think that the big guys are going to do the heavy lifting for us. And that's kind of maybe the moral of the story, where it's like the president's talking about it, the administration's talking about it, ETFs are here, Larry Fink's our best employee, on and on and on and on. It's not intentional. It's not like any of us sit back and say, okay, my job's done. It's just subconscious. We're like, I don't have to make that meme today, or whatever it is. Like, what you name the thing, you just, as a human being, you kind of sit back and rest on your laurels. Like, okay, yes, my job's kind of done here a little bit. And so I've definitely felt that the last 2 years. And that's been concerning to me, because my big concern is not the network, anything with the network. My big concern is just vibes, because perception is reality. And look at the dollar. The dollar runs on vibes. The dollar runs on confidence. It's a con game, like it's you couldn't pay anyone to use a money that stole from you or steals from you, except the only way they keep you in the network is the IRS, the long barrel of a gun, the end of the barrel. That's it. And we're going to track $600, anything over $600 or over $10,000 at the bank. And then if you do something overseas in another country outside the dollar, well, guess what? You've got, 12 aircraft carriers, 13 aircraft carriers coming. And so that's just the name of the game. So no one would choose to use a money that steals from them just on their own, but you have to be coerced into it. But in saying that, the confidence is there from people to use the dollar. And at some point, there's a saturation point, because people forget this too. Hyperinflation doesn't mean how many dollars you've printed. It just means, where's the confidence? If people 1%, 2%, 3% lose confidence in that currency, well, guess what? It's going to zero. And 99% has already been lost since 1913. And we're going to lose another 99% probably over the next 10 years. It's not going to be that long, actually. We lose another 99%. And so this process is going to play out. And I think we're just hoping to stave this off. We're hoping to get as many people on the life raft as possible, because we can see where it's going. We can see that the ship is sinking. And most people are still reading the press clippings. They're voting a new captain in after the iceberg has been hit. They're shuffling deck chairs, trying to get into a new asset class. And S&P 500, real estate, altcoins, that's all in the Titanic still. And we know where it's going to be. A Bitcoiner's on the life raft, floating away and saying, guys, this thing's going 12,000 feet under in a few hours. Like, you guys got to get off. But it's just confidence. It's a lot of those people have the confidence the ship is not going down. I don't know when that saturation point hits, but it's going to hit at some point. It's the eyedropper on the paper towel with the marbles on it. At some point, there's enough water, there's enough saturation where the marbles fall through and it's game over. And I think it's coming sooner than later. And at some point, there's enough people yelling about it and screaming about it because this is the other thing too, Beau. I mean, growing up 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, people weren't talking about a lot of stuff. Even like Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world with one of the biggest platforms, biggest megaphones, maybe the biggest megaphone in the world besides the president of the United States. He's out there talking about conspiracy theories. I don't know. I'm 50-50 on Elon Musk. I don't know if he's the greatest guy in the world or worst guy in the world. You could make an argument either way for the guy, but it doesn't matter for this talk, because all it matters is these conspiracies, these things that were really taboo 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Zero people talked about this stuff. Now it's out there. It's out in the public lexicon, and that doesn't go back. The toothpaste doesn't go back in the tube. And so that to me is, I've told this many times, to my mom, my wife, other people have known me for a long time. I was like, if you would have told me 20 years ago that this stuff was talked about in a public sphere and it was, just kind of accepted, or people are thinking about it, you couldn't have paid me any amount of money 20 years ago as a kid, 25 years ago. I would have never believed you. So I thought I was the only one thinking about these things. And you're looking around, what is going on? So the fact that some of the richest people in the world are talking about it, or at least putting it out there into the ether, I couldn't be more happy. It's directionally we're going the right way. It's just, again, it's the old hodl meme of it's the downs, the ups, the downs. It's just it's not this straight linear path of, we're in this weird segment right now, I think, of culturally, we don't know who we are a little bit. We've kind of lost our way a little bit, because I guess landing the plane once again, is that my fear is that you have a big player come in, whether it could be a Michael Saylor, it could be a Larry Fink, it could be a country. And then they say, we need to go this way. And that's not what's best maybe for freedom and individual liberty. And they have so much sway and so much power and people looking at them, because humans love leaders. Again, pop open the Bible and you'll see a story after story of, we want a leader, we want a leader, we want a leader. And so then you have someone saying, well, I think we should go this way. And if that person has enough clout, then guess what? A lot of people are going to move that way. And it doesn't mean you can't have your Bitcoin and fork it off and have your own thing. But hey, if society perception is reality and vibes are vibes, guess what? Society might be going a different direction. And to me, that is truly the biggest threat that I foresee for Bitcoin moving forward.
Have you ever felt like you've done everything right, built the business, made smart investments, and yet there's still one piece missing? If you're someone who believes in Bitcoin but hasn't yet explored mining, let me introduce you to something that most people never even realize exists, and that is fully managed Bitcoin mining with Abundant Minds. We help high net worth individuals like you own industrial grade mining infrastructure without ever touching the machines. It's hands-free, professionally hosted, and designed to generate passive income by turning electricity into Bitcoin every single day. It's tax advantaged, it's asset backed, and for many of our clients, it's become one of the smartest moves that they've ever made in their investing career. So if you're ready to take the next step into real Bitcoin ownership, not just holding, but producing it at a discount, visit abundantminds.com. That's abundantminds.com and see why this strategy is changing the game for serious investors. You said something off camera that was kind of interesting to me. Maybe we don't need everybody to get on board. And I don't know if this is part of where you're going, but I think of some of the, greatest innovations, greatest changes in history, greatest revolutions. They were actually pretty small groups of people being very nimble, very agile, and there wasn't mass agreement before they made incredible change. The founding of this country being one of those examples, a relatively small group of passionate individuals that got just enough resources behind them to make incredible change and didn't really wait for a committee to follow them along. That came later. So is that what you were saying, or what did you mean when you said we don't necessarily need everybody to adopt this?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I think that a lot of society, unfortunately, is going to probably go the wrong way. And when I say wrong way, I just mean maybe against their own freedom and individual liberty. Like they're gonna drink from the chalice of easy currency once again, or whatever. Look at like Argentina or some of these countries. They've had 6 different currencies in the last 30 years and keep doing the same thing over and over again. Freedom at the end of the day, like you said, with the Revolutionary War, you think of how based those people were that came over to, crossed, took a month, a couple weeks, whatever it is to cross the Atlantic at that time. So pretty entrepreneurial, pretty, badass people that came over, and only a couple percent of them really actually grabbed the musket and said, yeah, no more, I'm not doing this. So, that's such a select few people. And guess what? The 97% of people, will say the other 97% that were either for the British or didn't care, had their head in the sand, they got the Bill of Rights too. They got the Constitution. And so to me, it's going to be a small, irate minority that are going to pull everyone across the finish line. Freedom is taken. It's not granted. And like you just kind of mentioned that and alluded to that. That's what made me think of that line. And it's so true. Like there's not like, we're going to wait for the board to approve what we're going to do. That's not how life works. That's not how freedom works. And so it's power and energy are going to control things going forward. And this is why it's, what you guys are doing in Abundant Minds is amazing. And just the mining industry in general is just really going to spearhead a lot of this, I think, going forward. I believe you have, like, I look at citadels, freedom cities, all these different people, because I think, and then you have like stable coins versus Bitcoin. Stable coins, I think, are going to be, Pete Rizzo, I had him on the podcast a few weeks ago, and we had a really good chat online and offline. But, he kind of turned me a little bit to like, hey, like, positively speaking, like stable coins are here. There's nothing we can do about it, but like, it's going to be a good thing. And I'm a believer of that. At first I was kind of like, I don't know, but it's going to teach a lot of people, like, take it for what it is. Is a Bitcoiner a perfect world? Like everyone jumps on Bitcoin. Okay, well, that's not reality. So reality is people don't want volatility. So they're going to probably go to stable coins, a lot of people. But hey, they're going to learn wallets. They're going to learn exchanges. They're going to learn a lot of these things. And then guess what? The next logical step is Bitcoin, because you're still going to have the contrast of, oh, hey, these people here in Bitcoin keep getting wealthier because they keep printing more dollars, more stable coins, whatever you want to call them. And so they keep getting poor against Bitcoiners. And then Bitcoiners, what are they doing? They're building out freedom cities. They're building out citadels. So we're going to have this real contrast, power, energy, all this. Bitcoiners flourishing, having these networks, and you're going to have the rest of the people on, the society on UBI and UHI and CBDCs and stablecoins, whatever, all this other shenanigans. You're going to have the contrast. So people are going to, the power and energy difference is going to have people, and this is where we talked about touching the stove. We're going to a lot of people touch the stove. The small A-rate minority is going to say no more. So whether maybe governments change and some, things, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but you're going to have these people who have real FU money. They have Bitcoin in self-custody, and they're going off and building their own things. And then society is going to have a choice to make. It's that the true divergent, road in the wood, the meme we know of, like CBDCs and slavery or Bitcoin and freedom. People are going to have to make that choice over time of, do I want to go and have what these people have, or do I want to keep going this route with the government? And so to me, I think that's really that contrast is going to be huge going forward. It's going to get bigger and bigger. We talked about the wealth gap. there's going to be like this Bitcoiner wealth gap of like the Bitcoiners and the fulfillment they have in life and what they're doing with this world that they're living in versus the government world that you accepted. Well, you don't have to choose that. You can choose something different. I think a lot of people are going to be seeing that and jumping off the Titanic and either swimming toward the lifeboats or hopefully getting in before they even touch the water. And I think that's the world that's coming up. So to your point, yes, I think it's a small irate minority who are there, the remnant that are going to build this world. And a lot of people will end up coming to it maybe a little later on, a little, later than we hoped and expected, wanted to, because we're here, we want to save other people. And that's why we do what we do. I mean, that's why I do what I do. It's like, I could just go live on a farm somewhere. I could just go do nothing and shut my mouth. Like I said, that's not what drives me. It's the fear at the end of my life that I get to the gates and he's staring me in the face and saying, "Hey, why didn't you do this?" But also because I have 4 kids. I have a family. My friends, all these people, like, I don't want anyone to be living in this hellscape of, Back to the Future 2, Biff Tannen's Pleasure Paradise. Like, what are we doing here? Like, we all have to live in this world. It's like, let's take care of it. Let's actually figure it out.
The stablecoin part is interesting to me because I feel this tension. I don't know if you wrestle with this of like, if I'm going to give my energy to changing the world, is it better to be a pioneer, an idealist, the no compromises tip of the spear, or to be the bridge builder who helps people create the widest possible path to get closer to the right answer or closer to good or just incrementally better? And I see a lot of our spaces a fight between the two is the
Yep.
people who, have gotten very clear on what the ideal vision of it looks exactly like, shitting on those who are doing their best to find the most reasonable and realistic path for the greatest number of people to get closer to good. And I think stablecoins falls in that kind of like bridge that doesn't get you all the way there, but net is in the right direction for most people and at least gives them an incremental opportunity to get closer to ideal and makes a wider path for the people to get to that ideal state. I don't know how you feel about that or if you agree or disagree.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Beau, yeah, you nailed it. I mean, this is the thing I've been thinking about for a while now, for a couple of years, and it's kind of what we've been dancing around a little bit. And this is pragmatism versus realism, idealism versus pragmatism. And Bitcoiners, I think, again, we have the memes of like the INTJ. I think I'm saying that right? Like the personality profile, right? Everything like Bitcoiners right now, or at least in the last 10, 15 years, 17 years, tend to be very visionary, entrepreneurial, inventive, stuff like that, right? So, like you kind of mentioned, we're moving to this new echelon. We're starting to go into this new world of adoption, and more people are coming in. So it's watering that down a little bit, and that's the clash. That's the fight that's being had right now, like you said, of this idealistic nature. And I had Mike Green on my show a few weeks ago, and we got into a debate about this, which wasn't supposed to be a debate. And then he wanted to make a debate, and he got a lick or two on me in the beginning. And then I came back, and he couldn't answer a question. He couldn't answer. He wants to educate society and well, we got to be educated on capitalism and like the dollar and what it actually means. I'm like, well, that's great, Mike, but like, look, you're the inflation you want, and you said we need 2% inflation, all these things. Like, look, there's more homeless than ever. Like your cattle prod isn't working. I'm telling you, we need to reorient the architecture of society, the incentives of society, to get people to make those decisions on their own instead of us trying to beat them over the head and re-educate them all. And he couldn't answer it. I asked him like 3 or 4 times, how do you propose to do this? And he couldn't answer it. And that's what, unfortunately, the fiat apologists or the gold bugs, there's no answer for it. It just stops. It just ends, like I said earlier. And there's no plan. So to me, it's, and he tends to be very pragmatist of like, well, the dollar's there to cancel debt. That's all it's supposed to do. It's what it says right on the bill. I'm like, yes, I know that. Like, I agree with you, but like, we don't have to take that. Like, you can go change things in the government. And a lot of people just take the government like, well, this is what I've grown up in my entire life. I can't change it. And it's like, okay, like, let's start from ground zero. We are the government, like, especially if you're in America. Like, go read the founding documents. Again, this goes back to ground zero, like we were saying earlier. Go read the Declaration of Independence. So a very short document, probably my favorite document ever, maybe even more than the white paper. It's an unbelievable document. And you go read the Constitution too while you're at it. We can choose to do different things. Many people throughout society have chosen to do different things. good, bad. They put a stake in the ground and say, I'm not going that way anymore. I'm not doing that. Now you're going to have to route around me. You're going to have to do something different. Bitcoiners are doing that by buying Bitcoin and putting it in self-custody. That's a way to do it. Starting a war. That's another way to do it. Hey, I'm going to break the old order or whatever it is. Like that's another way to do it. There's different ways. You can say to your family, hey, I'm not coming over anymore because I'm sick of this happening or whatever. Like there's different ways people put their foot down. They say, I'm not doing this. And so to me, I just never understand that part of it of, I'm definitely way more idealistic and visionary than the average person. And like I said, a lot of Bitcoiners right now. So I think this is the fight, Beau, that we're really struggling with. And I know I struggle with it all the time of, well, like logically, this does make sense. The stablecoin thing. That's why like my conversation with Pete, it was like, well, no, that makes a ton of sense. Like I get it. Let's think optimistically about where we're at. And I think what Bitcoiners have a very hard time with is accepting people where they are in the sense of most people are not revolutionary. And that's something, and I'm speaking to myself, like I have a very hard time with this because it's just like 2 + 2 = 4. This is not hard. If everyone just chose to jump right now, we can choose to have a money that doesn't steal with us. Like, let's just do that. But no, the average person is lost in DraftKings. They're lost at MGM Grand still in Vegas. They never came home 2 weeks ago. Like they're just gone, And so we go back to sedation and all these things. And it's like the people that are plugged in, we're looking around like, where is everybody? Like, how come? And so when you only have a small number of people, it's hard to make an impact. So you really just have to kind of focus on yourself, do what you can with, right around you with the resources you have. And then hopefully other people kind of see that, like we said, be an example, and they start coming your direction saying, hey, your life keeps getting better. Hey, you have more time on your hands. Hey, you're building these cool things. Hey, and then people eventually start coming that direction. Because I don't have a good answer. We can't beat people over the head. You can bring a horse to water. You can't make them drink. Even God can't. We have free will. He gave us free will. And so, he wants you to be close to him, but you can choose not to be close to him, right? It's a story of life. And so that to me is this pragmatism versus, this visionary world that's playing out. And you can see it, like you said, just kind of erupting all over the place, whether it's on Bitcoin Twitter or wherever it may be. And it's tough. And I don't have a good answer other than, hey, it's probably things are happening and the adoption is happening at the pace it's supposed to happen. Because if we had it, any faster, if we just adopted everything tomorrow, it'd probably be a lot of chaos. Like there would probably be a lot of crazy things going on. Could the network in all of its facets hold everything? So as much as we want it tomorrow, the pragmatist in me, is trying to say, hey, you know what? It's probably going the way it needs to go. And hey, the benefit is we can adopt more of our friends and family. People have the chances to come onto the life raft before they're all gone, before whatever. In saying that though, I will say even the last person on a Bitcoin standard still stands to benefit greatly. And I'm a massive believer in that because as more people join the network, you have society getting better and better and better and better around you. And that person, the last person on the Bitcoin network, they still benefit because they're living in that world. This Bit, Tan, and Pleasure paradise we talk about, it reverses and goes the other direction. And that person now is not living in a hellscape. They're living in a society where people are happier, they're more charitable, they're more fulfilled. And so now the last person, so that's another thing like Mike Green, we were talking about the other day. And he's like, well, what happens when the last Bitcoin's mined? It's not fair. Like you're locking out every person in the system thereafter. I'm like, what do you, whoa, like, what are you talking about? Like how that's insane. I was like, you're explaining the fiat system, like when I am born, I have a debt number hung on me, a social security number. Like they're literally giving you your debt and saying, hey, this is the debt. He's like, no, it's not. No, there's not. That's not how it works. I'm like, they don't spray currency on you and say, here's your trust fund. Here's your Malibu real estate. Just because you were born, because there's 2% inflation. Like they think like it's raining, currency down on everyone equally, like it's rain on a field. Like everyone just gets like this money and because there's 2% inflation, it's capitalism. It's like, dude, you couldn't be more upside down right now if you tried, Mike. Like, God love you. But like Bitcoin is the only fair system where you have to use time and energy in order to acquire the Bitcoin, whether it's the mining or you have to buy it with the existing time and energy you saved up, or you're going to work for it. It's the only way. And so anyway, it's just too many tangents, Beau. Too many tangents. There's it's tough. Pragmatism versus the visionary aspect. This is the fight we're in. It's tough.
It's challenging too because it's many otherwise very intelligent people that just can't see certain aspects of this, and that's maybe one of the most frustrating things is speaking to somebody who otherwise is extremely intelligent, clearly has really good reasoning faculties, but is missing some foundational piece, hasn't looked quite deep enough down the stack of the layers to understand just how it's all organized. I know that you wouldn't spend time and energy putting content out there, speaking to people, writing, if you didn't believe that it were for a purpose and that it were going to help somebody. What gives you hope in this time period of your life and this environment that we live in, that what you're doing is going to have an impact? Or what gives you hope in the environment for, let's say, the next couple of years of people grokking this system change?
I mean, first and foremost, I think my faith in God, Christ. I mean, like I don't think this would be implanted. The fire in me, which I've literally realized it was in there since a kid. I don't think it would be in there any other way. Like that doesn't make sense. Like if this was all for naught, you would just be like I would just be doing whatever I wanted all the time. Like it was just like, it's a free for all. Like I'm damn Bilzerian. Like I'm just gonna live my life all the time. There would be like everyone would live like that. Is my point. Not just me, but like everyone would be living like that. It would just be like I'm making my own rules, and so that in the macro gives me the most hope and faith that those things are implanted in certain people in the world. Again, not just me, but probably millions of people around the world. But there's billions, so like it's not a big class of people. Vast majority of Bitcoiners, I would say, are in that boat as well. It's like this deep fire inside you. So that right there gives me, it's one of the reasons I came into Bitcoin in the first place, is the social layer of Bitcoin and what we're talking about right now. Like that was, to me, like you said this earlier too, which is now this is all coming back in my head. No one ever changed their life like investing in Apple. Like no one like, I'm going to get healthier now. Like I'm going to do all these other things because I'm investing in Apple, or like I'm investing in this 300 unit apartment complex. Like, have anyone ever heard anyone say that? No. But how many people have heard a Bitcoiner, their life completely changed? They're fit now. They're, not eating seed oils. Like they're doing all these things. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I'm investing in Bitcoin, man. Like I'm in this Bitcoin cult. It's like, there's nothing like it. And so that to me, and again, being part of sports teams, like all this stuff, like I've seen a lot of different things, whether it's in business or professional sports or, college athletics, and that social layer was one of the big things. So those couple of things, those are some really big things that, that really give me massive hope. And then some of the other like obvious ones I feel like are we're in a debt-based system. So the government has to print lots of currency, trillions upon tens of trillions of dollars going forward. AI gives me hope. And then just in collective humanity, I think like humanity will come together. I think there's going to be events going forward, whether it's lockdown type stuff, or it could be war, could be AI going rogue. I think humanity will come together in some different ways that are just kind of like unthinkable right now to protect itself. And those things I think are still hanging out there, and we'll see those probably in our lifetime. So all of those things, we're made in God's image. All of us are made in God's image. And so that to me gives me massive hope. Like I'm very hopeful for the future. I think there's going to be some crazy times going forward, and there's going to be some dark times, but that's just the story of life. And there's massive abundance on the backside of that. I always think of Jim Rohn, one of my favorite personal development guys, of all time. And he was like 1980. There was this great, like one of the classic Jim Rohn, videos from like 1980, a talk he gave. It's a couple hours long, and you can find it on there. So good. And he's always like, oh, I went to this thing. They had me in for consulting, and this big Fortune 500 company. And they pulled me in there, and they're like, "No, Mr. Rohn, like we had you here because we really want to see, what the next decade's going to look like. Like, what are the 80s going to look like?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Gentlemen," he's like, "I do know. I've been around the world. I do know a lot of important people, and I guess got to tell you that the 80s, they're going to look a lot like the 70s." And it's just like it's a lot of opportunity mixed with chaos, like that's life. And so it's, I believe in the smaller minority. I believe in Bitcoin as a social layer, the freedom ethos. And like I said earlier with the Elon stuff, the people talking about this now, never in a million years, 20, 25 years ago, would I have believed that we would have, this much heavy lifting would have been done by other people, in essence, like people way up the stack even, and just like talking and exposing these things. I mean, it's, stuff I read 20, 25 years ago as a kid. You're going down these rabbit holes of, the CIA and MI6 and like all these different things. Like these things are like talked about now in like public areas. I'm like, holy cow, like this is wild to see what's actually going on. So all that stuff goes, makes me feel really good, because directionally, when you zoom out, as Bitcoiners love saying, obviously, when you zoom out on like the architecture of society, we're up and to the right. Like obviously with the technology, everything we have at our disposal, and then the public discourse and what's actually being talked about and the truth that's actually out there, couldn't be more bullish. Like this. And then on top of that, more bullish about Bitcoin in general. You have the Straits of Hormuz; they're accepting Bitcoin. You have the AI just in the last couple of months. Just with the progress being made and their productivity and people being able to get some of their time back, so they can work on their craft. They can study more about Bitcoin or sound money. Hey, what is it? These crazy guys were saying this thing about sound money and so all these things again, it's hard to see day to day, but when you zoom out, we are absolutely going up into the direction of society, the truth that's out there, people having more time on their hands. I mean, you name it. Those are the things that give me hope. I'll stop there. I'm sure that I know there's more, but I'm very hopeful.
Oh man, it's beautiful. And what I appreciate is, this is, I would say, a very hopeful technology, and you are a very wonderful spokesperson for it, and just the energy that
Thank
you
you.
bring to how you're describing not just where we are and where we've come from, but what we
Little too
have to
much
look
at times,
forward
Beau.
to. It's all energy,
Oh
right?
man,
And
it is.
people respond to it. And I think there's no replacing being truly, genuinely, to the core of your heart, excited about the future that is unfolding in front of us, and offering a path out of, like you said, essentially the alternative is a hellscape. And in many cases, people are living that right now and don't see what the path out of it is, or even really understand how we got here. And so a hopeful message is a really beautiful one.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, what is it that you're working on that you're most excited about right now, personally?
So yeah, I'm writing a few different books right now. One about kind of adaptation of Common Sense from Thomas Paine. So that's a joking offline. I've got to get that finished here in the next month or two. I'd love to get it finished by the 250th celebration, actually. So we'll see, because it's not going to be super long. But I have a chunk of it written already. But just about this, couple percent, the small irate minority, and just kind of getting back to the roots. And there's so many great Bitcoin books out there, but just trying to think of how does the average person think about things? How can we reach more normies, pre-coiners will say, I guess pre-coiners, no coiners, stuff like that. How can we make it shorter? If it's 50 pages, 75 pages, 85 pages or something like that. And just kind of the argument, not, hey, there's 21 million necessarily, right? Because there's other books that can do that, but, and have done it many times, but what's the argument for separating money and state, and why is it, important that we do that, and the ills of what happens when we don't. So trying to take from everyone else and what they've done and trying to right size it into a pamphlet in a sense, and make the argument for, hey, we've done all these things. You have to, are you sick of all of these things that are happening to you? The answer is changing the foundation that you're standing on, at the end of the day. And so that to me is the argument. And again, I have some stuff with Bitcoin in it, and I actually have like kind of a version I was thinking of where like it doesn't even mention Bitcoin. I know Jeff Booth's book, The Price of Tomorrow, which I think I have right over here on my shoulder. That was like 7 years ago. That was one of my favorite books. And he mentions Bitcoin like once, right at the end.
Yeah.
And so
Same.
it could be, yeah. And so it could be something like that, where you kind of make the argument, just, generally speaking, for separation of money and state and why we're having all the problems we have. And then just, mentioning, hey, this could be an answer at the end. So kind of going back and forth on that. That's probably one of the things that's kind of, held me back just a little bit of really which core direction I want to go. Cause I have kind of numerous visions of it and kind of things written out, and I just don't totally know which way to go with it yet. So, trying to discern that. But that's probably the big thing right now. And obviously my channel that, doing interviews and putting out content, more live stream content, doing some more talking head stuff, as well going forward, which is just, Brandon_Gentile. You can find that there on Twitter and stuff like that. I'm not as active on Twitter as I'd like. We homeschool our kids. That's a big thing. I know I've kind of touched on that earlier, of like just formal compulsory schooling. Great book, by the way, for Bitcoiners. Bitcoiners have to read John Taylor Gatto's books. Dumbing Us Down is his first one. I believe it's like 1992 that he wrote it. And he was a New York State Teacher of the Year. And he went to accept an award, and he gave this soliloquy, this speech basically, which turned into that book, basically trashing the government run school system, and which is really wild. And so he goes in there, but there's some really cool stuff that I only read it like a year or two ago, and really kind of opened my eyes to a few things that are very Bitcoiner-esque, and written in 1992, but not talked about at all in Bitcoiner circles, really. Just about government run schooling, things like that. Just, like homework's just the extension of the state, trying to keep your kids busy at night so that way they can't talk to based Uncle Beau, based Uncle Brandon. They can't go do other things. They can't be a kid. So all these little things. And it went back to my childhood of really not liking school after like fifth grade and being like, this is pointless. And then looking back now and kind of confirming my own suspicions of like, I literally don't use any of what I did after like fourth or fifth grade, zero of it. And I know there are some people out there that might, and that's great. You can go do that if you want, but even you can make an argument for attorneys and doctors and all of that. If you're 13, 14, 17, 8, and you're like really good and really smart and you want to go do that, just go apprentice, like go do the thing, And so anyway, that's again another whole talk for a different day. But those books. I think it's Dumbing Us Down, Weapons of Mass Instruction, and then the Secret Underground, the Secret Underground American Education History or something like that. But it goes back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, and the Prussian school system and all this, and how it's just again training doers, not thinkers. Rockefeller and all those guys, the General Board of Education, and you start realizing just a complete scam all of it is, and it's not designed to actually do much for you. It's designed to just keep you busy, see who kind of comes out, the cream rises to the top in the sense of like who can be our C-suite at our companies and run Rockefeller's companies and run Vanderbilt's companies and run these guys' companies. And like, we don't want competition. So we're just going to, and then if you don't conform, you're stupid, you're dumb. You need ADHD or ADD medicine. You need Ritalin, it's going back to sedation. So all these different things, you're just like, holy cow, like this is just goes so much deeper, obviously, than you ever imagine. And of course, Bitcoiners know this better than anyone, whether it's the food pyramid or the school system. So separating money from state, which I think is very linked to separating education from state, not too far soon after that. And then you're going to see, again, with AI, it was done 30 years ago, 50 years ago to do a lot of that stuff. But now with AI, all these things happening, I mean, just the formal school system of 8 hours a day, sitting there trying to cram a bunch of subjects in your head. I mean, none of it makes sense at all with AI now, especially, and all these different tools where like, I can go watch an MIT professor talk about the F-22's flight controls, which I've done before. And he's given, it's an F-22 Raptor demonstration pilot giving the aeronautical, class to an MIT class. Like I can go watch it on YouTube right now. I don't need, like it's crazy. So anyway, I think we're in for massive change in the next decade or two, coincided with the demographic shift. The younger generation coming up won't stand for a lot of this anymore. They just, the 45 and under crowd, sick of the lack of transparency, sick of the opaqueness, sick of the BS. Massive change, like change we haven't seen in 80 years, 100 years minimum. So it's massive abundance coming.
Anybody listening to this within the last hour, I think, has had the opportunity to get a complete shift in their worldview. And I just want to give you the opportunity to cap it off with anything that you feel is an appropriate last bits of wisdom, or whatever we didn't touch on yet that you feel is the appropriate just cherry on top of everything this might have exposed someone to who hasn't done the deep dive into any particular aspect of this, but this just engaged so much curiosity in them.
Well, you don't have to be a revolutionary at the end of the day. Bitcoin's amazing because it is a peaceful revolution. You can just buy Bitcoin and self-custody it. And now I think that the more active you are, the faster things will turn. So I do advocate being active, because we had the ability to vote with the ammo box and the ballot box for a long time. And now we can vote with our wallet, we can vote with our feet, and we can vote with our voice now very easily with social media or different stuff. So there's 5 different ways to really make your vote, I guess, count. Maybe that's the best way to say it. But so being active is great, but you don't have to be a straight up revolutionary. Obviously, you can just buy Bitcoin and be in self-custody. Those are massive things. But at the end of the day, save your time and energy in something that doesn't steal from you. Like we talked about this earlier about, I forget what it was now. Anyway, save your time and energy in something that doesn't steal from you. And, we were saying that you couldn't pay someone to save in fiat currencies. And it's something that's constantly robbing you. You have to be coerced in order to do it. So your time and energy on earth is finite. None of us know how long we're going to live. And the only asset I found, because I was down this road, like I explained, throughout the pod. I mean, I was down this road of trying to diversify and be in real estate and gold and silver and different assets and puts and call options. And and you're like, the guy on, was it Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the meme or whatever. And he's got all the papers everywhere. It's at the office. I can't remember. He's got all the stuff, right? The meme of like,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a hedge fund manager on this and that. It's like, no, I was a real estate guy or like whatever, but I'm trying to be a hedge fund manager at night. And that's what all of us have to do. That's the insanity of all of it. And so you can breathe easier, step off the hamster wheel if you just save in an equally finite money. And that captures infinite value, which is, a paradox, unlike any other we've seen maybe. And so you have this finite time and energy on earth. And then most people store it in infinite pieces of paper, which is literally the dumbest investment you could ever make in your life. And people spend, what's the quote of like, people spend 40 years working away at a job and they spend zero on what they're working for. And that to me, Beau, is like another one of those mind blowers where you're like, as soon as I got out of college, that's why I was like, I got to study money, like immediately. Like I'm 22 years old. Like I don't know anything about money. I was so curious and fascinated to like, what is this thing I'm working for? And then you look around and you're like, no one cares. Like no one cares. Like they just accept it. I think no one thought like, oh, and I always make the analogy too of people just assume like that root, like will always be there, like the foundation, or like they just assume like everyone starts on first base. And so you have this world of no one thought to question the money, the thing you're actually accounting in. They just assume they just assume like, I'm going to assume everything is good there. I'm just going to go to first base and start from there. So this goes back to like why Michael Saylor years ago would talk about Bitcoin or the existing, economics, everything being a pseudoscience. Well, it's a pseudoscience because it's built on a false premise. It's built on something that's, being inflated away, and it's not real. There's nothing backing it. So this goes back to Vitalik saying, I don't like Bitcoin anymore. I like Ethereum. And that's why I built Ethereum, because I don't want to be tethered to physics. Well, in order to actually have a real society going forward, you need to be tethered to truth. You need to be tethered to physics, to laws of nature, to first principles. And so these are the things coming back to storing your finite time and energy on earth into a finite asset where everything else I've ever found is infinite. There is some type of, you can make more land. I can find more gold. There's some type of infiniteness to every other asset. And the Bitcoin protocol is the only thing that doesn't have that. And I said too, the reason I found Bitcoin as well, I've been telling this story a little bit lately too, in just a sense of I was open-minded enough to come to Bitcoin. That's what led me there. I was in gold and silver. I was in real estate, these wonderful assets, but I was open-minded that there might be something different. I'm open-minded now. To me, Bitcoiners are very open-minded. That's why you get to the place you are. You humble yourself. You realize that maybe the story they told me about JFK wasn't that way. Maybe the story they told me about money wasn't that way. And you're open to learning a different interpretation of what's going on. And that, to me, is the biggest roadblock for most people, is they're not open to what this new world looks like or what the old world looked like. And I think of Alvin Toffler's book, Future Shock, from 1970. And he wrote, the people of the future, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but the people of the future will be those who can learn, unlearn, and then relearn. And that's the world we're living in right now. You have to be malleable. You have to be open that your life could have been a lie. And that's very hard for people to understand, because it's like, well, maybe I would have chosen something different if the incentives were different. And so that's where Bitcoin breaks people's minds, because they can't handle that truth. And so I think time just does the heavy lifting. I think a lot of that is just taken care of with time. The dark quote of science progresses one funeral at a time. And that's just, again, story of life, story of humanity. And so we'll just kind of chip away. We'll educate people. We'll build stuff, products and services. It's great because more of us can get sats at cheaper fiat prices, and more of our friends and family can come on board over time. And it will just chip away as adoption grows and the price grows, till eventually there's no USD price. There's no fiat price. And it's just Bitcoin, and you're trading Bitcoin for that house, or you're trading Bitcoin for those goods and services. And that is the medium exchange. That is the unit of account. And life is much different. And it's not a utopia. It's not a equal outcomes. It's equal playing field. And I think that's also inherently what people are a little bit nervous of. I think there's a lot of people that are subconsciously a little nervous about an even playing field. And it's probably people that are higher up the rung, kind of nervous. You're a little bit like, that doesn't sit right with you, because, hey, I've done a lot of work already. Like, hey, there might be someone out there who's better than me, but I'm grifting off the system so much in this fiat world. and I might lose that. Well, yeah, you're damn right. Mr. Attorney in New York City, you might be swinging hammers. You might be on a roof, because we need more contractors, by the way. We need more skilled trades. And a lot of those people on Wall Street or attorneys or Silicon Valley, I need you on my roof. I need you there. You got to swing some hammers, because we don't have anyone under 60 doing the dang thing. So that's this equilibrium society that has just been blown out of whack because of fiat and just artificial bubbles. And now we've skewed society, skewed the profession, skewed everything so much, because incentivized the wrong things. Where in a sound money world, a Bitcoin standard, all those things, you have the natural little ebbs and flows here and there, but you don't get this way out of whack culture where government comes in, central banks come in and blow currency into it and just say, hey, I'm going to paper over, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z thing in order to fix this problem, be the arson and the firefighter. So again, a long answer there, Beau. But yeah, it's hopefully finite time and energy, trade it for a finite asset at the end of the day, a finite protocol, I should say. The asset is beyond that. Bitcoin is a protocol outside of all of that. And it's truly a new world. And to me, it's the only way we're going to go from type 0 society to a type 1 Kardashev society, and the ability to harness, the energy of the earth and then the world and then as we expand out. So incredible times moving forward.
God, the citations section of this podcast is going to be so good. If people just take the bibliography of everything that was mentioned here, so rich. My favorite quote, just to round it out, I totally agree with the learn, unlearn, relearn loop. I think that only becomes more important the faster the world moves around us. And if nothing else, that gives you the tools to accept everything else that's coming your way.
So true.
Brandon, I have so thoroughly enjoyed this, and I know that anybody listening to this has also really enjoyed it, if nothing else, just for the pure breadth of what they can possibly discover from any of the threads that you got a chance to pull on. You mentioned it before, but where can people keep up with your work, follow you, engage with you, and just keep in touch and see what you're working on?
Yeah, no, it's an honor to, like I said in the beginning, Beau, to have me on. Thank you so much. It's an honor to talk about this anytime, absolutely anytime. So it's always an honor, no matter what. And people can find me at Brandon_Gentile. I believe that's the handle is probably for everything. Noster, Twitter, my YouTube channel, everything. So it might even be my Substack as well, possibly. So you can find me, search me there. You might find a few hockey fights, possibly, if you could check on YouTube and you just put my name in there. But just scroll past those, and the channel's in there somewhere. So amazing stuff. Thanks, Beau.
Love it. Thanks for coming on, Brandon. This was super fun. Can't wait to have you back on another time.
Thank you.